All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Fatboyz Dynasty Podcast, presented by the Fantasy Holics. As always, coming at you, Bo and Brant. We're going to talk about some waiver wires. We're going to talk about some bye week fill-ins as we hit another bye-pocalypse. The last one of the 2022 season, the week before most playoffs start. We had a lot of injuries this week to go over. We have some bye weeks to go over for week 14. Let's get straight into this. I'm just gonna. You got anything to add, Bo, before we jump straight in?
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to address everybody based on the results of the Los Angeles Chargers pass catchers this week, or if we were just going to let that one go by the wayside this week.
I will tell you next time somebody has a question about DeAndre Carter or Josh Palmer, I'm going with the opposite one that I feel like it's supposed to go because so I
did that on the live and said Josh Palmer, and it was a Josh Palmer game over DeAndre Carter. I just wanted to put that out there. That's it. Again, just to have fun. No serious digs involved here. This is part of giving fantasy advice. You ain't gonna get them all right, but it just made me chuckle when I saw the end of the box score there.
Should be a Carter week this week due to the fact that Palmer took it last week and Carter took it the week before, right? That's how the rotations are gonna go here. No, it's probably gonna be completely Keenan Allen this week.
It makes it. Austin Eckler's due for a 12 catch game. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that he is. Man, Eckler hurt me this week a little bit. I know he had a good game, but that one hurt just a little bit. Let's jump in. Let's talk about some of these injuries that we had over here on Week 13. Let's see, the Rams, both their quarterbacks, Stafford went to the IR. Both their quarterbacks got banged up. Seattle barely beat them. Don't even want to talk about that, but as we're in that game, we got to talk about Kenneth Walker got banged up. So it looks like Walker will miss at least a minimum. It's sounding like 1 week. Nothing official has come out yet. I know he's doing some further testing as we record this on Monday. So nothing's came about yet. Let's see. The big injuries got to hit Jimmy G, and what does that do to the San Francisco offense and the San Francisco team in general? I mean, this was a team that looked like legit Super Bowl contenders coming out of the NFC with the top 2 defense, probably top 5 defense, and then a great system quarterback. What do you think of the San Francisco offense moving forward with Jimmy G being out for the rest of the year?
Yeah, for me, I think this is a huge boost in the arm for guys like Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey, guys who focus and get a lot of their receptions behind the line of scrimmage. You talk about putting a guy like Brock Purdy in who doesn't have a lot of game experience, still pretty young in his career. What's he going to look to do? He's going to look to get easy chunk plays, let his skill position players make plays for him. I also think long-term it helps George Kittle a little bit as well. I would say the biggest downgrade in my eyes is probably Brandon Ayuk. I don't know how many times you're going to see Brock Purdy try to get the ball over the top of the defense. I would assume that Kyle Shanahan will play game management with his offense a little bit just because of how darn good that defense is. They'll try to keep from making sloppy turnovers, giving their defense good field position to work with.
Yeah, I think it's a big boost for the running backs there. Christian McCaffrey, we'll see a little bit more of a run volume in my mind. I think Mason is who's backing up McCaffrey right now. We'll see a little bit more. I think you're going to see a guy like Davis Price who's coming back from injury. He's a guy that's definitely probably going to get a little bit boost, a little more work because they're not going to want to just feed everything to McCaffrey. They're going to want to have to keep McCaffrey healthy. Sure. So I expect that to be almost a 3-headed monster, and I don't know how fantasy relevant the other two will be, but McCaffrey is definitely taking a step up. What other big injuries did we have this week? Well, we had a big cut there in Carolina with Baker Mayfield. Just got released today. And in my mind, I don't know if Baker plays again this year. I don't know if he gets claimed because nobody's going to want to pay that 1 point whatever million it is. Even if he signs somewhere, how good is he really going to be? So in my mind, I don't know about Baker Mayfield and all this.
Yeah, there's only a couple places that Baker makes a whole lot of sense. Maybe potentially, I don't even know how much sense it would make for them because it'd be like eating their words. But I would have to imagine Baker could potentially be an uptick over what Russ is putting out week in and week out right now in Denver. However, I think if Denver goes and picks up a guy like Baker Mayfield and puts him in quarterback competition with Russ, how silly does that make the entire Denver organization look in comparison to how already silly they look? I mean, I know you guys got, 2 first-round picks for him, as well as the Noah Fant and Drew Lock side of things. And, if Denver goes out and, hey, we make a play for a quarterback, how bad do they just make themselves look completely stupid. And then obviously the 2 obvious ones based on the injuries, which I know we're getting ready to talk about the other one here, is Baltimore and San Fran. But again, I don't know how willing teams like that are going to be to go fork out a bunch of money for a guy of Baker's caliber who really hasn't proved a whole lot in his NFL career. A lot of highs, lows, more like a roller coaster than a traditional first-round quarterback would look.
Right, yeah, and you just brought it up in Baltimore, Lamar Jackson going down, Harbaugh coming out saying it's days to weeks for Lamar Jackson. So that's Tyler Huntley is a replacement guy. And what is your aspect of that offense moving forward with Huntley in case Lamar does miss some time?
Well, first I want to start off by saying I'm not sure Lamar Jackson knew this was a contract year for him because the numbers haven't been exceptional. We haven't seen him get out of the pocket and take off running as much as we have in the past. We haven't seen him pass as well as we have in the past, which really isn't saying much because he's not a great passer to begin with. But as far as that goes, I think it's a huge uptick to guys like Demarcus Robinson, Devin Duvernay, and Mark Andrews, as well as the running backs. I think J.K. Dobbins, if he can get himself back in the next week or two in the absence of Lamar Jackson, that should be a huge uptick for him because there's going to be a little bit less of that designed quarterback runs and more of those designed running back rushes. So I think it's a small uptick. Obviously, Lamar Jackson is a better quarterback than Tyler Huntley. I don't mean that, and I don't expect the Ravens to be as good, but for fantasy relevancy, period, I think it's an uptick for a lot of the guys in Baltimore.
Yeah, absolutely. I do too. I think Huntley gets out there and he can sling the ball a little bit better. And I mean, we did see him, in the absence of Lamar last year when I believe it was he missed a game or two, and we saw Huntley was very serviceable for fantasy relevancy and for the Ravens. I mean, he kept them involved. He kept them involved in the game. So yeah, Huntley. I think it upticks the. Just like you said, the wide receivers a little bit more and the running backs there. And so it's super flex leagues, guys. If there's a chance to go out there and get Huntley or get Brock Purdy, I absolutely think Brock Purdy's a good game manager and will fit that Shanahan system. Obviously, he's not as good as Jimmy G. He was Mr. Irrelevant for a reason, but he's definitely a guy that could be relevant when it comes to fantasy.
I also want to add for super flex. I know the Atlanta Falcons are going into their bye week this week, but Arthur Smith did come out and say that every position is going to have a battle over this bye week. To me, that means the Marcus Mariota experiment may be dead. He's looked horrendous the last few weeks. I would not be shocked to see with an extra week of rest here to see maybe a Desmond Ridder get an opportunity. I'm not saying he's going to beat him out because if he was any good, I think he would have already beat Marcus Mariota out because he's been atrocious. But it is something to keep an eye on if you're the guy who's in a 12-man league and you're playing Marcus Mariota every week. You may want to go out and try to hedge that with Ridder if he's available.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope Ridder does take over. I was big on him coming out of college. I watched him play quite a bit at Cincy, so I would like to see him get his shot. Well, let's jump into a couple more of these waiver wire claims. There's not much out there. It's not much. It's slim pickings coming out. I'm going to start with the obvious one to go fill in for Kenneth Walker, and that's DJ Dallas, running back out of Seattle. Like I said, it looks like Walker's going to maybe miss a week or two, maybe even more time, pending on how these tests come out. And Travis Homer was the handcuff that I talked about a couple weeks ago to have for Kenneth Walker. But Homer's banged up. He missed last week. DJ Dallas saw, I think it was 49% of the snaps after Kenneth Walker went out, so 49% total snaps. So he looks like the clear handcuff, the clear guy that's going to take the workload. We have seen him in the past when Carson and Penny missed time. We saw DJ Dallas as the guy. But yeah, so I think if Homer misses any more time, I think both Homer and Dallas are two guys that need to be picked up and see what comes about, especially if Kenneth Walker does miss next week.
Yeah, and the one thing about that Kenneth Walker thing too, when Pete Carroll comes out and says it's a very strange injury, that almost makes you cringe a little bit, just because the way he made it sound, it was a weird lower ankle sprain, but it was strange. I don't know. We'll see. It's definitely one I know for you, Brant, as a Seattle fan and a Kenneth Walker owner, you're definitely going to have your eyes on that one.
Ankle jammed is the way that Pete put it. Ankle jam.
That's right. That's right. So that's definitely one anybody who's invested in Kenneth Walker needs to be mindful of. It probably should be, in my opinion, week 14, can't lose this week for a lot of people. You should probably put in as much of your fab budget as you have left on a guy like DJ Dallas just to hedge that Kenneth Walker thing. So definitely something to be mindful of. Going from one rookie running back in Kenneth Walker to another here, I've got James Cook, rostered in roughly 31% of leagues on Sleeper. This guy has slowly started to get more work the last several weeks here. I honestly thought, as a guy who drafted him in a couple rookie startup drafts in Dynasty Leagues, I honestly thought that the addition of Naeem Hines would see James Cook further down on the depth chart, and especially with as good as Devin Singletary has looked this year, but it seems to be the opposite of that. James Cook's been getting more involved since the Naeem Hines trade. 2 times in the last 3 weeks, he's had over 11 carries. I know one of those weeks, 3 weeks ago, was when they were in a huge blowout win and just kind of let him salt the game away. But this last week, when they were in a decent game for most of it, last Thursday night, he was getting carries early as well. And 2 times in the last 2 weeks, he's been over 5+ targets. So definitely a guy that they know can do it all, and they've been targeting him. And with him available in roughly 69% of leagues, this is somebody that I would be going out and picking up. Buffalo's offense is fantastic. We all know that. And if I can get a piece of that, it looks like it's trending upwards for playoff time and, again, for Week 14. And I'm starting James Cook this week with a fair amount of confidence in the leagues that I do roster him. So I think this is a good play for people to pivot to with this bye-week apocalypse coming.
Yeah, speaking of, and James Cook's a guy that a lot of people had him as undersized and would never be a workhorse back. Well, he's doing all this not being a workhorse. He's seeing 11 carries, like you said. He's seeing 5 targets a game. So it's not really workhorse numbers. He's only, 40% of snaps is one of his highest that he's seen all year. He's not doing it, but it's like you said, it's the Buffalo Bills offense. They find a way to scheme to get one of their more explosive players open. And you also brought it up as the bye apocalypse. I failed to mention this prior to us doing waivers. Let's talk about a few teams that are on buys, because that's going to roll me into also my other 2 waiver claims here. You got Atlanta on a buy. You got Chicago on buy. You got Green Bay on buy. Indianapolis, New Orleans, and Washington are all on buys. So you're out there, you're replacing players, and we're going to talk about some guys that we like to possibly replace some of these players. But you're talking about guys to replace like London, Watson, Pittman, Olave, Scary Terry. And then for the running backs, you're talking Cordero Patterson, Monty, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, Gibson, and B-Rob. All are going to need replaced. That's a lot of players that are going to need replaced, and we're going to definitely talk about some guys to help replace that. But I'm going to go into another waiver claim. He's a guy that is actually on bye this week, so you might be able to get him after waivers. And that's Tyler Algier of the Atlanta Falcons. He's rostered in about 50% of leagues, maybe a little over. He's seen over 50% of the snaps in 6 out of 13 games this year. He's had over 10 carries in 9 out of 13 games, over 45 yards in 8 of those. 8 of 13, and he's had at least 1+ reception in 6 out of those 13 weeks. So this is a guy that's starting to see an uptick, and like you said, position battle coming this week in Atlanta. I didn't know about that prior to me actually getting all these numbers here, but the position battle, that means that he could see an uptick in all of his work if he's the guy that comes out there and like they called him coming out, he's like a little bowling ball. He likes to run over people and through people. Well, we know that's what Arthur had there in Tennessee and Derrick Henry. So maybe Algier comes out of the bye week and he's the number 1 guy there.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning too that if Tampa Bay wins tonight, Atlanta's a full game and a half out of the division. Um, they're not playing well, not trending in the right direction. So I could see Arthur Smith fading some of these veterans for some of the youth just to see what they've got prior to going into the draft evaluation process for the offseason. Atlanta's going to have a lot of cap space as well. So I think you'll see some of these veterans make way for, especially, again, if Tampa wins tonight. If New Orleans happens to beat Tampa, then Atlanta's still in the thick of things, and that may change where things go moving forward, but definitely something to keep your eye on. Another running back I have, this one almost makes me want to regurgitate my lunch into my mouth here. It's not something that I've been a fan of. I've been a non-believer in this guy since he came into the league. I know, Brant, you were high on him for quite a while. We've had several knockdown arguments over this player, but I'm going to bring him up anyway, and it's Cam Akers. Currently, Cam Akers is rostered in 55% of leagues, and I was the guy that has said all along that I like Darrell Henderson better than Cam Akers. And I really thought we were going to start to see that this year when Cam Akers held out wanting to get traded. But the Rams and Cam Akers kissed and made up. And this week without Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers saw 72% of the snaps, 17 carries for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. Really, that was the guy that kind of kept Los Angeles in this game against your Seattle Seahawks for a large part of it. I'm not necessarily going out and saying that I think Cam Akers is going to be a touchdown scorer every week. I think it's probably quite the opposite of that. But there is that if he's going to be getting 70+% of the work for the Los Angeles team, the Los Angeles Rams team that has no true starting quarterback, no true outside weapons on the outside, there is a small amount of value to be had here because sometimes with these guys in the NFL, it only takes 1 out of 17 carries for them to be fantasy relevant. Busting a 40-yard touchdown run or something of that sort. So with Cam Akers being available in 45% of leagues, again, I know this is cuffing season. We talked about that on the last week's cast. However, if you have a couple roster spots available, and let's say you're one of those teams that's not getting a first-round bye, you're in position 3rd through 6th or however deep your playoffs go, and you want that other opportunity based on matchup plays for some of your other running backs, Cam Akers is worthy of a pickup in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I unfortunately he did see the majority of the snaps. I was on the Williams bandwagon there coming out of the draft and everything else, so I was really hoping he was going to take over that backfield. And I mean, playing against Seattle, their defense kind of gives gifts away to all running backs, so I was really hoping that he would take advantage of that. I mean, 302 yards from Josh Jacobs 2 weeks ago. So we just kind of let the running backs look good, and Cam Akers definitely did look the best out of those two during that game. And like you said, it's kind of almost unfortunate because you may have been on the Darrell Henderson is better than Cam Akers. Well, I was on the Williams is better than Cam Akers. Anything to get Cam Akers out of there because, well, I didn't want to see me be wrong on that one. So my other guy to go pick up. He's also on bye this week. He played 79% of snaps, and you just talked about it when you're seeing 70+% of snaps in your offense. You're a guy to kind of look at. He also saw 9 targets and had 1 touchdown. He caught 5 receptions, and that's Jahan Dotson there for the Washington Commanders. We know that the Commanders Scary Terry normally sees the number 1 corner regardless of who they play, and Dotson's going to come in, and he's owning less than 50% of the leagues. He's a guy that's just coming back from injury. He had good numbers prior to going out with injury. So this is a guy that could make an impact and help you move forward through the fantasy playoffs with matchup bases. I know they have the Giants, I believe, during the playoffs, and they have a couple of other games that there's a possibility of seeing them trail quite a bit. And we know that Washington ain't pulling away from anybody. And they're staying in most games with Tyler Heinicke at quarterback. So as long as they don't choose to somehow, for some reason, go back to Carson Wentz and screw up their whole season, there's a lot of fantasy relevancy to have there in Washington with Heinicke at quarterback.
Absolutely. I know Jahan Dotson's been somebody who's near and dear to your heart, so definitely a good one there this week. Another rookie wide receiver that I want to talk about here, again, this one is rostered in 58% of leagues. So a little bit of an uptick, probably due to the excitement of last week, but I think he will probably be dropped a little bit too. So I think by the time your waivers process, it'll be probably closer to 50% roster. But that's Jameson Williams from the Detroit Lions. And first of all, I want to add, I believe, I'd have to go double check this here, but I think the Detroit Lions have won 4 in a row. Their offense is starting to look explosive. Jared Goff is definitely turning back the tide here. He completed 31 out of 41 passes for 340 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions against the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. They do have a tougher matchup coming up this week, a divisional matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. But Jameson Williams is a guy that I think a lot of people really got to know him when Alabama was making their title run last year. Jameson Williams was a guy that was extremely quick. He got that first couple of steps he was there and he was gone in the blink of an eye. He's a field stretcher. He's a burner. He's also reminds me a lot of Michael Thomas. You get him on a slant, he could take it to the house. So this is a guy that he only saw 11% of snaps this week, but they were definitely easing him in coming back off the injury from his knee. But I think he ultimately starts getting involved in the offense starting this week and moving forward. I think by the end of the season, it'll be a really great 1-2 punch with him and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So again, if you've got if you're a guy who was losing a lot of players this week that are wide receivers, because there is some great names. Again, you mentioned them, Brant, but I want to hit them again real quick. Scary Terry, John Dotson, Drake London, Cordero Patterson, Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Paris Campbell, Christian Watson, Alan Lazard, Chris Olave, Jarvis Landry. There's a lot of really good wide receivers out this week. So if you're just scratching and clawing trying to find a lineup, to field a lineup, this is a guy that you could put in that I think the floor is pretty low, but the ceiling's very high with this guy. So I think this is one that if you happen to have him available in your league, again, he's right now roughly available in 42% of leagues. I think it's probably closer to 50 by the time waivers process. But if he's available, I suggest you go out there and go grab him up. So I think this rolls us right into our next segment that we wanted to talk about here, Brant, which is guys to plug in and play this week. We're going to talk about a little bit of projections and matchups and why we kind of like these guys. So I'm going to start right with Jameson Williams at the wide receiver position, again, just because of how many guys I just listed that are out this week. Jameson Williams is at home against the Minnesota Vikings this week. He's projected 5.5 points and half-point PPR this week. This is a guy that with his speed and his talent that he could stretch the field real easy. A couple catches, he could be well over that 5.5 total points. What do you make of Jameson Williams this week against the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, and you hit on it. They've won 4 of their last 5. They did lose Thanksgiving. Detroit did. I just wanted to make sure that I got you back on that one for the DeAndre Carter comment. But Minnesota is actually 3rd worst against wide receivers in fantasy points. So, yeah, absolutely. They're going to have to throw to keep up with Minnesota. Minnesota's been a team that's been right there in the thick of things in the playoff hunt with the NFC. I know that they've, are right there in the top of their division. And so Minnesota is playing for a lot. And I know they got Patrick Peterson out there. They have very, very good secondary. But Jameson Williams could be the guy that sees the least amount of coverage due to the fact that he's coming back from injury. So, yeah, I absolutely love him to go over his 5 points there. I would not be surprised to see him find the end zone this week, possibly.
All right, fair enough. Who do you have for our first bye week filling at running back there, Brant?
So I got 2. I actually have 2. They're in the same game. I'm just putting them both together, and they're guys that people have been questionable about all year, and that's Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. I know that a lot of people have, hey, do I start them? Which one do I start? Everything else. So I kind of wanted to get these guys out right here. And they go in and they play against Houston, in Dallas, in Jerry's world. Well, Zeke is probably a must-start in Jerry's world because, well, Jerry's going to be there, so they're going to feed Zeke quite a bit. But Tony Pollard is so explosive. These are 2 guys that I don't know if I'm pulling out of my flex for the rest of this year with the way that they have. Let's see. Tony Pollard is projected 15 points, and Zeke is projected right around 13. So actually Pollard and Zeke Pollard is projected a little bit more than Zeke, but both these guys are very serviceable this week. They're going in, they play the worst defense against the run. one of the worst, because I think Seattle may have passed them up, 2 weeks ago when they let Josh Jacobs go rampant. But but yeah, they're playing. Nope, they're still the worst. So they're playing the worst rush defense against fantasy. Both these guys could easily go over 100 yards and find the end zone. Both these guys are very, very serviceable to fill in on bye weeks. And like I said, I wanted to get out. I wanted to just talk about two players that a lot of people have question marks on. Plug both these guys in and probably don't move them again. Because they're definitely getting involved, and that offense is really starting to click. 54 points this past week against a very, very serviceable defense.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way in the world, especially with this bye week apocalypse, that you can sit either Tony Pollard or Zeke against the Houston Texans. So I'm fully on board and in agreement with you on this one, Brant. I'm actually going to do the same thing you did, but not backfield mates. I'm going to go two wide receivers in the same game this weekend. And again, I know I said on our live a few weeks ago, maybe this weekend, that I was putting all these guys on the shelf for the rest of the season. I was staying clear of it. But it is bye week apocalypse. I'm being forced to play them, so why not put the advice out there for the rest of the world too? Cortland Sutton versus the Kansas City Chiefs is projected 8.7 points. This is a game that I expect Kansas City to be in control of for most of the game, which means Denver is going to have to pass a decent amount, which is putrid with Russell Wilson under center. I understand that. However, this is one of the lowest projections you've seen from Cortland Sutton all season, and I expect in this game for him to have to be involved a decent amount. For Denver to have any remote chance of being in this. I don't think – I would have to imagine Vegas has the odds at like 95% in favor of Kansas City here. I would think Denver would start as huge underdogs in this one. But it is a divisional matchup. We see strange things happen all the time. So Cortland Sutton's the first one in this game that if I have him on my roster, I'm probably trying to get in this week based on other guys missing this week. And then from that same game, I actually have Marquez Valdez-Scantling as well, who's projected at 7.9 points and half-point PPR. Marquez has definitely become Patrick Mahomes' deep ball threat. Last week, last night, I watched that Kansas City game pretty intently, probably at the same time you were watching your Seattle game. And on back-to-back plays, Patrick Mahomes took deep shots to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. In the first one, he had a horrendous drop. In my head, I'm sitting there going, man, that just killed his momentum for the game. Mahomes isn't going to look his way again. And then, boom, very next play, 45-yard completion over the top, almost the same exact route. And Marquez Valdez-Scantling came down with it. He also happened to drop a pretty easy touchdown catch in that game, and Mahomes still continued to look his way. So this guy could have easily had a massive game last week if he comes down with that touchdown catch as well. So this is a guy that Mahomes has got trust in. I'm not sure how much longer he'll have it if he keeps making these drops. But, again, on bye week apocalypse, this is a guy that I'm absolutely getting in my lineup because, again, one play with him and you could secure yourself a decent amount of points.
Yeah, with MVS there, I know, all the drops and everything else, but I see this game getting out of hand really quick, and I see Patrick Mahomes just going out there and tossing the ball around and taking those deep shots. I expect them to get on top of Denver pretty quick, and I expect them to come out there playing some playground ball probably from the second quarter on. Because Denver can't score more than 18 points. So as long as they put up 3 touchdowns in the first quarter and a half, they can do whatever they want the rest of the game because they know Denver's not coming back. And as for Sutton's a guy that if they do jump on a very high lead, yes, he's going to see plenty of targets. Make sure you keep an eye on his questionable tag. He is questionable this week. I know he went down and went down early last week, or early in week 13. And didn't have a catch, but this is a guy that as long as he plays, he's definitely going to be having to go into my lineup with everyone that's missing. So I'm going to talk about a guy that actually came off an abysmal week. His backfield mate also had an abysmal week, but they also just played the San Francisco 49ers, who, like we talked about earlier, is a top 5 defense in the NFL. And they go in next week, and they're going. Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson are going to see the Los Angeles Chargers defense, and the Chargers are one of the worst against running backs also. So these guys, I know, it's extremely hard to trust them after the abysmal week they had. Well, I think Mostert is still the lead back in that backfield. He saw 67% of the snaps actually this past week. And I know Jeff Wilson had the better 2 weeks prior to, but I think Mostert's actually still the lead guy there. And they go against the Chargers. So I actually like a Raheem Mostert this week. He's projected at 10 points. I expect them to get higher than the 10 points there. Like I said, Chargers are actually second worst against the running backs this year. So even though they had an abysmal week this week, those are both two guys that I'll be looking at, and I like Raheem Mostert more than I do Jeff Wilson Jr. And I know I own both of them, so in one league, and I'm starting Mostert over Jeff Wilson this week.
Yeah, I actually wanted to bring it up too. So you brought up Josh Jacobs torching your Seattle Seahawks a couple weeks ago. He torched the Chargers this weekend too. 26 carries and 144 yards, averaging 5.5 yards per carry.
Well, at least they slowed him down.
Yeah, definitely a good sign of things to come for those Dolphins running backs as well. And actually, that Chargers Raiders game is the last one I'm going to talk about here. Another guy that I've got is a bye week fill-in here. Mac Hollins of the Las Vegas Raiders. He's projected 6.9 points and a half point PPR. This is a guy that just this weekend saw 9 targets, 5 receptions for 35 yards. So he would have been right there at that projection. This weekend, had he come down a couple more, he exceeds it. This is a guy that has slowly started to build trust with Derek Carr. And the Raiders have another pretty good matchup this week. They play Thursday night against the Los Angeles Rams. And I know that you should see Jalen Ramsey on Devontae Adams. I'm not sure Jalen Ramsey wants to shadow the number one after just getting embarrassed by DK. I'm sure you saw the play, Brant, in real time as DK went from one side of the field to the other, and he turned around and waved Jalen Ramsey on. Ramsey's throwing his hands up, and then DK goes on to go make the catch for the first down on that play. So definitely get to see a pissed off Jalen Ramsey this week. And if he happens to go with Devontae Adams, Mac Hollins could be in line for a huge line of work this week. So another one that I'm looking to get in lineups in absence of some of these guys on bye weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So my last name to hit on is Deontay Foreman there at the Carolina Panthers. And he's going against my Seahawks. So that's about why. I know. You know, with Chuba Hubbard coming back prior to they were on bye last week. So with Chuba Hubbard coming back right before the bye, Chuba saw 17 carries to Foreman's 24 carries in the week prior to the bye. So obviously Foreman is the lead back there. I expect him to have a very, very good game. I know some people are still shaky with starting him after his, 2.4 and his 2 points and his 4 points in week 9 and week 11. But you're going into week 14. He's projected 11 points this week going against Seattle. I expect him to find the end zone. And I'll tell you right now, I probably expect Chuba Hubbard to find the end zone also because, we can't stop anybody. We might be able to stop Sam Darnold, but we'll see. I know we can stop Baker Mayfield because he won't be there. But unless he's in Seattle, which I know there was the rumors of us trying to trade for him. But gosh, I hope Geno's done enough to keep him away. But no, back to Foreman. That's another guy that I really, really like this week to start against our defense. I expect Carolina to stay in this game because, Seattle can't blow anybody out, even if they try, apparently. Because if you can't blow out the JV team there in LA, then apparently you can't blow anybody out.
Yeah, sometimes playing down to your competition's a real thing, and I think that's what happened to Seattle this week, but they still played well enough to win. Geno still looked the part. I don't think you have to worry about old Baker Mayfield coming to town there in Seattle. So definitely some guys to keep your eye on this week as you're setting your lineups. Trying to field a lineup. I know for me, I'm going to struggle this week because I have about all the players from all of these teams across several of my leagues. So definitely something to be ready for. Definitely got to pivot early, get your waivers in, and just be ready to go. And hopefully this is a week, and in my opinion, this is a week that you're going explosions over safety with a lot of these waivers because it's a week that a lot of people can't handle or take a loss in because fantasy playoffs start next week for a lot of leagues. So I know we'll be doing some special stuff on that next week for our podcast. But that's about all I got, Brandon, unless you got something else.
I want to add, go Bucks. I need you guys to hang up a bunch of fantasy points tonight with Tom Brady and Chris Godwin, because I need that bye. I need time to get my players back to healthy, losing Kenneth Walker and a few others this past week. So let's hope the Bucks can put on a show tonight against that New Orleans team. But no, we're going to be talking about, fantasy playoffs coming off. Join us on our live Sunday morning. We're definitely when we get to your question this week, we're probably going to be asking if you're in a win and you're in, or if you've already locked in your playoff situation or anything else. Please add that part of your question too if you're asking, because that could pivot who to start in some plays. Because if you're winning, you're in, or you're already in. If you're already in, you probably want to go safety. If you win and you're in, you may have to go boom in order to get in. But make sure you join us on Sunday. I know we got some big things coming this offseason. A lot of names starting to come out of college players that are skipping their bowl games, and we'll be bringing those up too here shortly on our cast. But yeah, I think that's about all I got before I get into a whole ramble on session.
I do want to add too, Brant, and this wasn't something I was even remotely thinking about until you just brought up what you brought up, but Brant and I will shift back for most of the off season to dynasty relevant things as far as getting ready for rookie drafts, incoming rookies, which is still relevant to redraft because some of these rookies are going to need to be drafted early in redrafts as well. So there'll be some coverage of redrafts. Also, we kind of have alluded to it a little bit, but you're going to see something different from the Fatboyz next season as well. We'll probably do a dynasty podcast each week, as well as a live podcast each week with Josh Rodriguez, the guy who's been behind the scenes doing our producing for us on our lives on Sunday mornings. So that's something to be prepared and be ready for as we're moving through the off season. Also, breaking news did just come out. Lamar Jackson is unlikely to play this week, so definitely be going and looking for Tyler Huntley if you need that pivot. Oh
yeah, definitely. That's big news, breaking news right here on the Fatboyz. As you heard my phone in the background, apparently I forgot to silence that there. But as always, stay hungry
and stay fat, my friends.